1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeff Rempel, the manager of Facilities Construction Services, and I'm here to tell you more about building Kingston.
I'd like to recognize Kingston is on the traditional homeland and territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, and thank you to these nations for their care and stewardship. A little about me, I'm originally from the BC Lower Mainland, and my ancestry is Irish-English.
Hello and welcome to Tell Me More, the City of Kingston podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hosier, joined in studio, also known as the Councillor's Lounge in City Hall, by producer Paul Whittingham. Paul, can you believe this is our 14th episode of this podcast? I didn't want to say anything for episode 13 because I know how superstitious you are about numbers. Paul eats M&Ms and even numbers, and there's a whole line of things. But does it feel like we've been at this for 14 months?
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's flown by for me, and I know you're just giving me a hard time, but we have a great episode teed up today to celebrate lucky number 14. Today, we are sitting down with a good friend and colleague of mine, Mr. Jeff Rempel. Jeff is the manager of Facilities Construction Services at the City of Kingston, but Jeff and I have a history of competitive pursuits, not only poker and squash. It's nothing really competitive because, I have to admit he always wins, but I can tell you that Jeff is an excellent poker player, excellent squash player, but even better, and that benefits everyone listening right now, he's an even better architect. At the City of Kingston, he manages a team that builds new facilities and renovates and restores existing facilities. The most recent facility the team completed was the Kingston East Community Center. But the team has led other recent builds and renovations, including the new Kingston Fire and Rescue Maintenance Garage, the city's first net zero building. They've worked on a new fleet maintenance garage, Bishop's House restoration, and most recently the team has just started the renovation and restoration of the Richardson's Beach House to provide increased accessibility. So, where might we see these four walls in the ceiling? Jeff sees more. He considers form, function, environment, use, the list goes on. Jeff has agreed to come on the podcast today to tell us more about what goes into building a new facility from the ground up. Welcome to the mic, Mr. Rempel. Jeff, we're not at the poker table. We're not in the squash court. We're at work. But welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is a bit strange for me to ask because we're colleagues and friends on the outside of the workplace, and so I kind of know the answer, but for the benefit of our listeners, tell me more about yourself. How long have you worked for the City of Kingston, and what were you doing before you landed here?
Well, since there's no video and you can't see my gray hair, I'd like to say I graduated from university just recently, but
yeah, you're a new grad,
that's not the case. I've been with the city for about 5 years now. Many years ago, I graduated from the University of Toronto School of Architecture.
Very cool.
I briefly practiced in Toronto for a while before packing up and moving to the U.S.
U.S.? Whereabouts in the U.S.?
In New Jersey.
Wow.
I was an associate at Greenberg Faro Architects, where I worked on large-scale retail, sort of focusing on redevelopment in urban zones. Most locations were on the East Coast.
Yeah.
New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Sort of the thought that if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere.
Absolutely, as the phrase goes, but more New York side of things.
Yeah. It's quite exciting.
Considering that's a commercial endeavor there, quite commercial actually. What drew you to Kingston, coming back to Canada, and working for a municipality?
Great question. I really honed my skills there because it was such a fast-paced environment. I sort of had an opportunity to come back to Canada in 2012 to work on a national program for one of our favorite restaurant chains that everyone goes to. So that was a great opportunity to sort of move back and learn something else on a national program. But I sort of reached a point in my career where I thought I wanted to put my skills to better use, some way to build a community, to build my community in a more positive and direct way. So that sort of led me to thinking of working for a municipality, and Kingston very quickly came to the forefront.
Right, and what better motivation can you have on that? And it's amazing having someone that thinks like you in this position, because some people might think a building's a building, simple as that. They're all the same. But through conversations with you, enforced and unasked and asked at some point, so I'm joking. Jeff is very passionate about his work. I've come to learn that it's just not the case. So give me a bird's eye overview of what goes into a building, not just logistics or the planning, but what actual boxes do you need to check?
Wow. It's a long.
That's a 14-point question off the bat.
It's a long list. So how much time do we have? It's a long list.
We're a podcast. You can go 6 or 7 hours, I believe.
It's a never-changing list, a never-ending list, and a never-changing list. So maybe I'll just start with the big three.
Sure.
And then go on to some other considerations. So the big three: scope, schedule, budget.
Okay.
What's the scope? Why are we doing this building? What's the purpose? What are the goals? Schedule, are there time constraints? Does it need to be opened by a certain time? And of course, budget. Every taxpayer dollar is so precious to us.
Absolutely.
That we have to make sure that we spend every penny fiscally responsibly and wisely. Other considerations, environmental considerations, the location, the impact on the site, the impact on the landscape, efficiency considerations, our GHG emissions. How do we reduce our GHG emissions? What's the strategy?
Greenhouse gases.
Yeah, what's the strategy behind that? And it's not just the building's operation, but it's also how it's constructed. Mm-hmm. Do we select materials that are readily available and have low carbon footprint to get to site? How do we even manage our waste on the site to minimize that? Accessibility and equity, diversity and inclusion considerations are paramount. How do we make sure our buildings are as inclusive and accessible as possible? From an architectural perspective, the building needs to be enriching to the community in which it's built, like massing, materials, light, circulation, artistry, all need to be in harmony to uplift the occupants. It needs to be a positive addition. I could go on and on and on, but the importance is to bring all these items into balance.
Yeah.
One is not more important than the other.
Right.
But it's our job to bring them into balance so that everything's addressed as needed.
I think that's one of my favorite conversations with you. Something I'll mention a building, or we'll drive by a building or something like that, and you're like, "Oh, that's a really," and it looks like a box standard building, and then you'll say, "Well, no, this is really cool because of X, Y, and Z, and this is constructed in a certain way," and stuff that I might not be privy to, but as an architect, you can actually see what's going on in there. But overall, that's a ton of items to consider. That seems like a massive puzzle with a whole bunch of pieces. And we were talking before the recording about the need for buildings to be sustainable. So tell me more. What does that look like in 2021, sustainable building? And if you can, give me an example of sustainability in action. Give me a concrete example, so to speak.
Oh, that's a great question. It's my belief that sort of sustainability is not just represented by GHG reductions, by being resilient against climate events or making a building net zero. Although these are extremely important, they're not the only things that need to be taken into consideration with regard to sustainability. To me, sustainability needs to include future-proofing the building for an indefinite lifespan. It means a design that is welcoming, accommodating, and inclusive.
That's one key area. Like you talk about all the boxes to check and then the logistics and things like that. But if the building isn't welcoming and it's not appealing to be in, it kind of makes everything moot a little bit.
You need to be able to use the building.
Yeah.
You need to be able to enjoy the space.
Right.
As humans, we kind of need three things to exist. We need food, companionship, and shelter.
Sure.
We are sheltered such a great amount of our time. It needs to be a valuable space that's enriching, that we want to be there, that's of benefit to us, that's safe, increases our wellness, and that's easily achievable, and we can do it.
Is that luxury nowadays? Because back in the 70s, and you'd obviously know more than that, of the very purpose utilitarian construction and things like that. Is that luxury now? Is that something that we finally, in the municipal and the government era, saying, all right, let's see what this looks like.
It's certainly evolved over time. And as we become more aware, things adjust to that awareness. But certainly they have their value. Like the building we're sitting in right now. This has been here for almost 200 years.
It blows your mind.
It's functioned exceptionally well, and it continues to function. And we're making improvements to it every day to make sure it continues to function in the future. So it's a very adaptable process. You need to be able to move, be agile and versatile to the needs, but also really looking forward.
And be versatile, like in this conversation where I'm throwing you right off track and all these questions like I typically do.
Oh my God.
But you're talking a bit about resiliency and to speak to some of these construction methods, they aren't necessarily that new.
They're not. Like geothermal systems have been around since Egyptian times.
Right.
We're sort of, it's only been like 50, 60 years since we've sort of rediscovered ways of using concrete. So a lot of these technologies have been around for quite some time. And that's sort of one of the key things back to the sustainability. We need a building that we can maintain and operate easily.
Right.
So let's choose a technology that's been tested.
Yeah.
There are advanced technologies that are coming out that are worth consideration, but they can also be addressed through technologies that have been, that are tried and true, that have stood the test of time, that we can maintain and operate. A great example of this is the new Kingston East Community Center or the new fire maintenance garage.
Yeah.
They're both true examples of finding that incredibly difficult balancing point of GHG, emission reductions, inclusivity, versatility, organic design, the use of bold materials that also blend and balance with the community.
Absolutely, and we've heard great feedback already since the opening and such. I haven't visited yet, but I'm so excited. I've heard so much about it so far. So you have your goals in mind and an awareness of all the considerations that need to be factored into, making a building a benefit to the community. What do you and your team do next?
Well, that's an easy one. We plan.
And plan.
We plan.
And plan.
And plan. And when we're done planning, we plan some more. And then we get building permits and build.
Okay.
There are typically 7 steps or phases that you go through in designing, permitting, and constructing a building. The first is pre-design. That's information gathering, due diligence. There's schematic design, preparing rough concepts, plans, elevations. There's design development, where you take those rough concepts and really formalize them, pick materials, start to do a finished design. Then you move into construction documents. You actually prepare the drawings that you're going to go out and get a building permit and a contractor. You then get your permits, all the approvals. There's tons of them to get nowadays, from building permit to heritage permits to environmental permits to sanitary permits.
Wow.
Lots and lots of permits to get nowadays.
Because they don't tell you on HGTV.
They don't. on HGTV, they walk through the house and then they're swinging hammers 5 minutes later.
And you're shouting in the background going, "That's not true."
That's not true. I had one project in the U.S. It took me 7 years.
Oh my gosh.
To get all the permits and approvals.
7 years. I've heard California could be absolutely brutal for that, but
Yeah.
East Coast too as well.
But once it opened, this large-scale retail building was earning $1.5 million a week.
enough.
So that 7-year turnaround was worth the wait. But things take time.
Of the pre-construction phases, the 7 phases, which is your favorite?
After permitting, you bid it, you find a contractor, and then you construct.
Yeah.
I really like the schematic design phase. It can be very difficult for clients because it feels like you're going in circles a lot. You might come up with like 7 options, but you need to come up with those 7 options to find the one that works.
Right.
So you might feel that you're throwing 6 away,
Sure.
but you're not.
Yeah.
Each one of those was successively better, and it educated until we got to the final one, the right one.
A refined.
The refined one,
Yeah.
correct. So that's really fun because you really get to understand the client's needs, their passions, and somehow manifest that into built form.
Do you find the matching the materials, and particularly sustainable materials, is that a pretty much a rote process? Like you use a certain range of materials, or is that pretty open depending on the design of the building?
It's very open.
Really?
It's very open. Like in my mind, a building has to be unique to its site.
Yeah.
You can't be able to pick it up and put it someplace else. If you can, then it's not really of architectural value. And its site and its program and its use and its purpose are all unique, and they all have to be thought of individually. What's right for that building in that location at that time for that use? Certainly, we have assemblies that are very commonplace, but you need to look at it with a fresh lens each and every time. You might have a site that has great solar exposure, so this is perfect for rooftop solar, but not every project is. You might have a project that has lots of shade, so that would be a good spot for a green roof, where instead of having to generate your own electricity to offset, you can actually reduce your need to heat and cool by having a green roof. So you need to look at all these things differently. Where's the site located? What's next to it? What's its neighbor? You're not going to certainly do a design that's in opposition to its neighbor. You need to fit in. You
Right.
need to be part of that tapestry.
And so, listeners, you can use that architectural fact to impress your friends. Yes, it's a brilliant design, and you couldn't lift this up and put it anywhere else. It's seamlessly integrated into the environment. Am I right?
Yes. It needs to be of value and unique.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense, especially for a municipal building, because it's hopefully going to be there for some time. Like the one that we're in here was 200 years old.
Yes. Like that's a really fascinating. That's also one of the reasons that really drew me to Kingston. I've always been fascinated by the moments of connection. Mm-hmm. How does a heavy material meet with a light material? Mm-hmm. And in this city, like we are the city of where innovation and history thrive. Mm-hmm. So it's like the old and the new come together in so many situations. How do you resolve that connection? How do you balance the two? It's really fascinating.
Have you found, and this could be a curveball question, have you found in working and upgrading like a building like this that's 200 years old, have you found any innovative solutions that they put in place back then, or that could have been a sustainable practice back then that is still in existence today in here?
Yeah, I would actually. Like this building is a large thermal mass.
Okay.
And there are ways to take advantage of that. It heats up incredibly during the summer, mm-hmm. and then it can radiate.
We've all felt that.
Yes, we've all felt that. So can we use that energy?
Right.
A lot of the difficulties arise when that energy is being displaced at the wrong time in the wrong place.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if it's gaining it all during the day, it reaches sort of a tipping point that it now starts to heat up too much. Mm-hmm. Can we displace that heat elsewhere? Sort of, it's the same thing with a geothermal system. We call them geothermal systems, but in reality, they're geo-exchange systems.
Okay.
You're putting heat here and you're taking it back. You're putting it over here, and you're sort of like a battery.
Okay.
Could we do the same thing with this building?
Okay.
Great opportunity to put solar panels on the roof of this building. I know it's a long way off, but they're coming up with better and better designs for these solar panels
right.
that are very seamless into the building.
And before we get the emails, it's a good idea to put them up there, but we haven't really started planning that yet, and don't expect it to see up there in the near future or anything like that. So on the outside, overall, it seems like a long time when you're constructing these buildings. You've got a lot of steps, a lot of things to consider. But when you know all the ingredients that go into it, you can really appreciate the time and consideration and the thoroughness of what has to be done to erect anything in the city at this point. And this has been a really great conversation. I could geek out with you on this stuff for ages, and we typically do on and off the squash court in between trying to catch my breath. But I've learned a ton, and I hope our listeners have as well. But before we sign off, is there anything you'd like to add? Actually, I kind of have a question that you can sign off with as well. If you had to choose between starting from scratch, new building, or taking an existing 200-year-old building or similar and renovating, restoring, reconstruction, which would you choose?
Goodness.
Because there's challenges in each, obviously.
They're both equally challenging.
Sophie's choice,
and
you can't.
Equally rewarding.
Really?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
A new building, certainly you get to start from scratch.
Right.
You get to put more of your design thinking into it.
Yeah.
But an existing building, like City Hall, for example, working on that, you instantly become a piece of history.
That's true.
Like you are now the legacy of this building. Mm-hmm. You're indelibly marked into this structure.
That's amazing to think of.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Like for almost 200 years, people have been maintaining this building, modifying this building, restoring this building, taking stewardship of it, and you get to be part of that.
That's amazing. And I think my employment agreement would have to say that I have to end with a statement. So what you're saying is where history and innovation meet.
Exactly. Exactly. That balancing point is such a great challenge to have.
And we're so thankful that you're the one taking on the challenge, you and your team and everyone involved, the unsung heroes of every building you see out there and the air conditioning you feel as you come in those buildings and many other factors for us to enjoy the facilities that we enjoy on a regular basis here in the Limestone City. So thank you, Jeff, for taking the time to explain a lot of this to us on the podcast, but also your continued explanation of this out in the community with me.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Paul, that's a wrap for Lucky episode 14. And what a great episode. Jeff is an amazing guest. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not go back and give us a listen to some of our previous episodes? We've covered a wide span of topics from agriculture to budgets to housing and homelessness and bylaws, everything. Today we talked all about buildings. And if you're a homeowner and want to make your home more energy and water efficient, take advantage of a no-interest property loan program like Better Homes Kingston. The City of Kingston and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities launched Better Homes Kingston to help homeowners realize deep energy retrofits to their home. Sounds pretty cool to me. You can check it out at cityofkingston.ca/betterhomes.
Remember to subscribe and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a topic for a future episode, tell us more. Tweet at City of Kingston #tellmemore or send us an email at tellmemore@cityofkingston.ca. For more on this episode, visit cityofkingston.ca/podcasts. Tell Me More is produced by the City of Kingston's Communications and Customer Experience team.
We've talked a lot about public engagement this episode, so why not find out what it's all about? Get Involved Kingston is your online platform for all City of Kingston public engagements, from surveys to focus groups to public meetings. Get involved. Go to cityofkingston.ca and click the big purple button square in the middle of the page. You can't miss it.